You know the drill by now. I'll be using this chart to grade the themes in the arcs of FMA. Ideally, a battle manga has a theme for each arc. In a previous video, I separated the story into arcs based on the manga, so that's how I'll be dividing the story here. Pro theme is truth, anti-theme is lie. By the end of this video, hopefully you will understand the meaning behind Dwarf and Ed meeting the truth. Lior had no theme. FMA does this thing where the characters kind of talk about the idea of a theme, but there's no execution of the theme. After the climax, Rose asks what she's supposed to do now. Ed tells her, stand up and walk, keep moving forward. That's not connected to anything that went on in the arc. It's just tacked on as a lesson. No lie, no externalization. F. Coal Mine Town and The Train are both skipped in Brotherhood, but they have no themes. Fs. The Show Tucker arc has the first good theme. Tucker believes that you should push the boundaries of science regardless of morality, while Ed believes that you should never sacrifice morality, even for science. Tucker's quote is, "This is how we progress. Human experimentation is a necessary step. Your Automail and brother are also the result of you messing around with somebody's life. We're the same." Ed's quote is, "Do you think you can get away with messing around with someone's life like that?" And, "No, alchemists don't do that." In the climax, Tucker sacrifices his daughter to gain money as an alchemist, while Ed berates him. Tucker suffers the consequence of death for his actions when Scar kills him, A-. There is no theme in the Scar arc, just an idea tacked on to the end. After the brothers get wrecked by Scar, Al tells Ed that making the decision to die is only something an idiot would do, because Ed didn't run away and leave Al. Here, Al is supposed to represent the truth, never decide to die, while Ed represents the lie, decide to die to save your friends. The first problem is that this wasn't set up. I was only able to piece this together because of Al's speech right after the fight. If you remove that speech, the entire thing falls apart. The second problem is that there isn't a proper externalization. Ed chooses to sacrifice himself, but he's not punished for following the lie. F. The Resin Bull arc doesn't have a theme. F. The Fifth Lab arc has a theme. The truth is, you can lean on others, represented by Ross. The lie is, you have to do things by yourself, represented by Ed. Ed doesn't have a quote, but Ross does at the end. Before the final battle, Ed and Al run away from Ross and Brosh to go to the Fifth Lab. The soldiers come to help right before the building crashes. At the hospital, Ross teaches Ed the lesson that he can lean on others, referring to the fact that they sneaked away. This is still a little sloppy because Ed doesn't have a quote, and Ross's quote comes after the climax, creating a similar problem to the Scar arc. If Ross didn't give her speech, I wouldn't have figured it out based on the execution, but it's not like Ross and Brosh even saved the brothers, which leads to my next point. There's no externalization in the climax. Al was doing perfectly fine on his own, and Envy and Lust were the ones who saved Ed. Therefore, there was nothing lost by them doing this mission on their own. If the soldiers played a major role in saving the Elrics in the climax, this theme would have been perfect. This gets a C-. In the Rush Valley arc, the closest thing to a theme is Winry telling Panina that she shouldn't steal and should get to work to honor her mechanic. The problem is that not only is the Panina plotline not the focus of the arc, but this message isn't even relevant in the climax, which is delivering the baby. No lie, which means no rep or quotes for it. Also no climactic externalization of the theme. F. The Duth Arc has an attempt at a theme. All is one, one is all. This is what Izumi teaches the boys, but once again, there is no lie or climactic externalization. F. The Greed arc has no theme. Ed vs. Greed doesn't have a theme, and neither does Wrath vs. Greed. F. The Lust arc has a theme. The truth is, don't let anyone die for your dreams. Al and Roy represent this. Al says, I won't let anyone else die for my dreams when protecting Hawkeye. Both characters embody the theme in the climax because they both have dreams that put their allies in danger, but Al protected Hawkeye and Mustang protected Havoc, Al, and Hawkeye. He also saved Hawkeye from gluttony earlier, even though Hawkeye said he shouldn't have. Unfortunately, there isn't really a lie. If I reached, I could say the moment of weakness where Hawkeye wanted to die was the lie, but it's not like she represented letting people die for your dreams. It was just an emotional response. B+. The Gluttony arc starts a theme, but it doesn't finish. Ling represents the truth, which is that a true king should respect his people. Wrath reps the lie, which is that a true king should treat his people like pawns. There are quotes, but there is no climactic externalization. Not in this fight or in the climax of the arc. Ling protects Lanfan, but it's not like he won the battle because of his decision. He just ran away. That's a C+. The other fights in this arc are Ed and Al vs. Scar, Ed, Al, and Ling vs. Envy and Gluttony, and everyone vs. Father. Ed and Al vs. Scar has a theme when Renry shows up and points a gun at Scar. Scar represents a lie. Revenge justifies murder, while Ed represents the truth. Revenge doesn't justify murder. Scar's quote is, shooting me would be justified. One truth quote is in a previous speech to Scar. Your vengeance will only sow the seeds of further violence. What you are doing is senseless revenge, and is feeding a fruitless cycle of death. You must end this cycle. Ed's quote is, your hands aren't meant to kill, they're meant to give life. In the climax, Ed prevents Winry from shooting, externalizing the theme. A+. This is in the middle of the arc, and the actual climactic fight has no themes, so the arc loses some points. The fights in the North Arc are Scar vs Kimberly, the North vs Sloth, Ed Allen Scar vs Chimeras, Ed vs Chimeras and Kimberly, and Al's group vs Envy. Ed vs Chimeras and Kimberly has a theme, Show Mercy vs Show No Mercy. Before the fight, Ed didn't want Miles to kill Kimberly and his men. He defeated the Chimeras without killing them. During the Kimberly fight, Kimberly says, "Instead of killing me off, you've given me a second chance to kill you," after Ed tries to win without murder. In the climax, Ed is punished with a loss for his position, but is also rewarded by the people he didn't kill coming to save him. That's 2 externalizations in the climax. A. Unfortunately, there is no theme in the climax of the arc, despite there being fights, so it's gonna lose some points. The countdown arc fights are Greed vs Wrath, and Everyone vs Pride and Gluttony. In episode 45, Greed is mad at Wrath for taking away his possessions, and Wrath calls those possessions foolish. There's a theme idea here, but not an actual theme. Everyone vs Pride and Gluttony started in episode 47. Despite being the best fight in the story, it doesn't have a theme. F. There are many fights in the final arc, but how many have themes? Ed's group vs Zombies, Olivier and Alex vs Sloth, Al vs Pride and Kimberly, Roy vs Envy, Van vs Father, Wrath vs Buccaneer, Greeling, and Fu, Ed's group vs Super Soldiers, Scar vs Wrath, Ed and Al vs Pride, and Everyone vs Father. Those are the fights. Roy vs Envy ends with a theme. Roy represents vengeance is good, and Riza, Ed, and Scar represent vengeance is bad. Mustang wants to kill Envy, but they tell him that he shouldn't. In episode 54, Mustang's quote is, "That thing deserves the worst death possible." Scar's quote is, "I shudder to think what kind of world a man held captive by his own hate would create once he becomes its ruler." Hawkeye's quote is, "This is pure hatred, and I won't let it take you." In the climax, Mustang chose to spare Envy, and the latter kills himself. A+. In Ling vs Wrath, the idea of a king is nothing without his people comes up again, but it goes nowhere. The final fight has a theme, with the 2 characters each meeting Truth, Dwarf and Ed. Truth tells Dwarf that he was incapable of believing in himself. His problem was craving knowledge and seeking perfection. When Ed meets Truth, he gives up his alchemy because it led him astray and made him arrogant. He thought he could solve anything with alchemy. Time to do some dissecting. If the portal of truth is the source of all alchemical knowledge, and Dwarf pursuing knowledge was bad, and Ed sacrificing his portal was good, then I can come up with a theme. The truth is, knowledge doesn't make you superior, and the lie is, knowledge makes you superior. Dwarf tried to use his alchemical knowledge to become a god, while Ed learned that his alchemical knowledge couldn't solve all problems. In the climax, Ed externalizes that theme by sacrificing his portal to bring back Al's body. I give this an A. The only reason it's not an A+ is because it was kind of confusing. I don't think everyone will be able to come to that conclusion. So here are the final grades. Lior, F, Coal Mine Town, F, Train, F, Show Tucker, A+, Scar, F, Resin Bull, F, Fifth Laboratory, C-, Rush Valley, F, Doubleth, F, Greed, F, Lust, B+, Gluttony, C+, and A+, and F, North, A, and F, Countdown, F, Final, A+, and A+. In conclusion, Fullmetal Alchemist struggles to consistently tell good themes. Sometimes it just tacks on a lesson at the end and calls it a day. Sometimes it doesn't even try. Sometimes it writes the theme well. But most of the time, themes aren't written into the battles, like with other battle manga. Out of the themes that are done decently, the Tucker, Fifth Lab, When Rekilling, Roy vs Envy, and Final theme are all done outside of a battle, despite some of them happening at the end of a fight. The Lust, Ling vs Wrath, and Ed vs Kimberly are all done during battle. Keep learning, Ubrarians.